So in this video, we are going to do the following. We're going to add some additional constraints and loads to this model. Now let's go ahead and take a step back. Let's go ahead and open the web app again. We'll go ahead and click the viewer. We'll go ahead and import that Nastran model. So this model is pretty much complete. There's an RBE3, SPCs, loads, and so on and so on. What we want to do is add 2 additional load cases with some additional constraints and forces, if you will. Right now, this is already configured with constraints and forces, but I want to show you maybe a different take on how to go about this process. Now, the web apps we are using today are available at theengineeringlab.com. Here at the top right, if you click on free trial pre-post web app, you can get access to the web app we're using today. Okay, so here we've imported the model. Let's do this. Let me increase the size. Or first, let me turn off the element colors, and let me turn off the element edges. And now let's go to loads and BCs, and let's increase the size of the arrows that represent the loads and the boundary conditions. So here, let's see, this is constrained. Oh, this might be a little too big. So let's go ahead and reduce the size of this. Okay, so if you look at the arrows closely here we're constraining the 2nd degree of freedom and the 3rd degree of freedom for these nodes, so green and blue. Let's go ahead and see what's going on here. We're constraining 3 components on translation. Component 1, which is the red, component 2, which is the green, and component 3, which is the blue. If we had a double arrowhead, that represents you're constraining the translation degree of freedom, but that's not what we have here. It seems like we're only constraining the translation degrees of freedom. And then here, we're applying 2 forces. So let's go and rotate this a little. Right, so you can see that there we have 2 arrows here. One arrow is pointing in the, it seems like I guess they're not pointing in the Y or X direction. It's some combination of the coordinates. So we want to create similar constraints and forces. So let's go about that process. And here, let me turn on the RBE2 element. It was I think earlier I said RBE3, but here it's RBE2. So here it's kind of hard to see, but there's actually a node here at the middle. And then 2 force entries are being added. They're being applied to this node. So we want to do something similar here in a moment. Okay, so let's do this. Let's go ahead and maybe turn off all these entries. And let's turn back on the element edges and the element colors. And let's go to the pre-web app. Let's go to the bulk data section, select entry, and then SPC1. Let's go ahead and create a new SPC1 entry. And then this SPC1 is here at the bottom. So I believe this is going to be constraining the 2nd and 3rd degrees of freedom. Let's go ahead and move this to the side. So that was for these elements here. So we'll go ahead and click the pick icon here on the right. We'll select node. And then we'll go ahead and pick those nodes that you see here in this hole. Now, there are a few ways you can do this. You could either do it in this orientation, or you can go into something called first person mode. So here at the top left, let's click on first person mode, and let's click on edit controls. So it's, this is a little fast. So press the keys gently. So this is going to be using gaming controls. If you're a gamer, you would use the WASD controls. And maybe for this example, it probably wasn't the best, but I think you get the idea. So here what we can do is the following. First, let's go ahead and turn off the labels. And now let's go back to the pre-web app. And let's continue adding nodes there. So you can continue adding nodes. You can increase the pick sphere size. So we'll go ahead and use 0.005. If if this model was in units of millimeters, the radius here would be 0.005 millimeters. And just to give you an idea of how to use this. Okay, so here you can just go ahead and rotate the model. I'll leave it up to you to decide how you want to look at your model. So let's go ahead and zoom in. There's another way of doing this, but I'm not sure if it works. This version of the pre-web app is still in development. So you'll find sometimes things do work and other times they do not work. That's part of the development process. And we're trying to make this as reliable of a tool as possible over the next few weeks. So let's go ahead and keep picking nodes. And let's see if we've chosen all the nodes that we needed to. Oh, nope, not yet. You'll notice that every node that we select turns blue. So I'm looking for only blue dots. If there's a missing blue dot, then that's not good. We have to go ahead and fix that. One thing you'll notice is that every time we pick a new node, we get these new arrows representing the degrees of freedom that are being constrained. So green for the second component, blue for the third component, and then if there was a red arrow, that would be the first component of translation. And then if it was a double arrowhead, it would be rotation. Actually, I could probably demonstrate that to you right now. So we'll turn on the fourth component here. And if you notice now, we get the double arrowheads representing you've constrained the first degree of rotation. So let's go ahead and do this only for TY and TZ here on the bottom right. Okay, so that's the first SPC. Let's go and repeat that for the other hole, which was this one. So let me try a different approach. So let's go ahead and create another SPC1 entry. We'll create an entry here. So that would be this blue button here at the top right. And then here, let's go ahead and turn off or constraint degrees of freedom 1, 2, and 3, which happen to be the translations in the X, Y, and Z. Let's go ahead and click on pick. And then let's click on phase. So I haven't tried this, but let's see if it works. What you can do is you can pick the faces. And then when you revert back to nodes, okay, so it does work. So let's try maybe that method. One thing you could do here, you could just manually modify the list here. So if you wanted to add node 1, if it exists, you would type in 1. Or you can just delete everything. Now let's go back to the face option. Here I've selected faces. Now what I can do is I can actually select the faces that I want to constrain. Maybe make the picking sphere a little smaller. That will give us more control as to what we pick here. And let's go ahead and maybe flip it to the other side. Sometimes it helps to zoom out and then zoom back in. Again, what you're seeing right now is currently in development. We're not done yet. We are going to do a lot more things to this tool to make life easy for everyone. Okay, so let's go ahead and zoom out. Let's go ahead and zoom in again. And let's go through this process of selecting the faces. Now, every face is going to have a corresponding number of node IDs. And then I believe we're done selecting the faces. So right, you can imagine every node on these faces is going to be constrained. So what you do now, after you selected the faces you want to constrain, you select the node option here. And now it switches to a list of node IDs. So if you look back here, that SPC1 has all of those node IDs that we just picked on the screen a moment ago. So that's SPC116 and SPC17. SPC16, we're only constraining components 2 and 3 of the degrees of freedom. So we're constraining the translations along the Y and Z direction. And then for SPC117, we're constraining the translations in the 1, 2, and 3 degrees of freedom, or the X, Y, and Z translations. Okay, now let's go ahead and create a force. So we'll go ahead and go to select entry. We'll go to force. And let's go ahead and create 2 new entries. So here at the top right, click on create entry once and then twice. And then if you go to the bottom, you'll notice that we have 2 new force entries available. So let's do this. Let's go and move this to the side. Let's find out where the RBE2 is. So remember, there is a node here in the middle, but it's kind of clouded. It's hidden by all of these lines representing the RBE2, but just trust me that it's there. Here, what we're going to do for the force 3 entry that we created, click on the pick icon, click on the add button, and then it's very subtle. But here, let me redo it. So let's go ahead and remove that node. You'll notice that right now, the list of node IDs is empty. We have not selected anything. But I move the pick sphere. I move it to the middle of this RBE2, and I click one time. And then it's detected the node that's there, and it's stored that node ID. And look what else has happened. Here in this list of application region or node IDs, it's stored that node. So now we can go ahead and do the following in these other columns. We can store, or we can program the force. So here I see that a lot of these forces are on the 50,000 range. So if this was, if the units were newtons, I would type in maybe 90,000 units, or 90,000 newtons rather. I think I got myself confused with units and newtons. So here the force has a magnitude of 90,000 newtons. And now what about the orientation? So this is going to control the orientation along the X, the Y, and the Z. So let's go ahead and look at this. Maybe I want to load this in the positive Z direction. So let's go ahead and do this. For the N3 column, and now what you can do, you can turn on the display descriptions. So then this is going to give you more text, more information about what all these different values are. Here I'm going to say, let's load this in maybe the negative Y direction. So -1. And right now the arrow is a little too small. Let's go ahead and increase the size of the arrows. Okay, perfect. Let's turn on the labels. You could double click the label, and then it gives you the magnitude of the force. So here, our force is going in the negative Z direction. It's got a magnitude of 90,000 newtons, if you will. Here we see the SPCs that we've created, SPC 16 and SPC 17. You can see that the values are 0. That means we have 0 in force displacement. And the same is true for these nodes here. Okay, so let's go ahead and configure our last load. So we'll go back to the pre-web app, and let's go ahead and pick a node. So here you could do a few things. You can either pick that node again. So maybe we'll zoom in here. So let's go ahead and pick that node again. And you notice that the node is now here, 5622. Or you can manually type it in. It's really up to you. Okay, now let's go ahead and give it a magnitude, maybe 80,000. And now let's go ahead and decide a direction. Let's go ahead and do this. Maybe I don't want to pull it. Let's move it in the X direction, positive X. So we'll go ahead and put +1 for the N1 component. So 1. And then here we'll get a preview in a moment. And let me rotate this a little. And let's go ahead and do this. Let's exit this and turn off a lot of the shading. Right. So here you have our new force with a magnitude of 80,000 going in the positive X direction. So now what's there left to do? Let's go ahead and turn on our element edges and our element shading. We now have to create 2 additional load cases with those boundary conditions and loads we created a moment ago. So to do this, go to the case control section, go to subcases, click on these plus icons, and we now have subcase 3 and 4. So let's give these some subtitles. Let's give a description here. New load case A, and then new load case B. And then we'll go to the command section. Or first, let's assign the boundary conditions and the loads. So for loads and BCs, let's go ahead and click on SPC. And there are going to be a lot of SPCs here. Let's go to the last page. So here at the bottom row, you could do a few things. You can control the number of rows you display, or you can flip through the different pages of the table. Here I flipped to page 2, and the last 2 rows have the boundary conditions I created a moment ago. Or you can display 20 rows, and the last 2 rows are the same rows, the 2 boundary conditions we configured a moment ago. Now, for subcase 3 and 4, the new load cases, I'm going to assign both of those boundary conditions. So we're fixing the model, if you will. We're assigning those constraints to load cases 3 and 4. Now for the loads, I'm going to take force 3 and force 4, which we created a moment ago. Force 3 belongs to subcase 3, or force 4 belongs to subcase 4. Now, what about outputs? Or what are we outputting displacements for? So let's go ahead and turn on display, or let's look for displacements here. Okay, good. So here I've said assign the displacement command to the above subcase level. So you notice that displacement is here on the right. It's above all these subcases, if you will. Now let's suppose we say, you know what, I only want displacements for subcase 3 and 4. So you would go ahead and mark those checkboxes for subcase 3 and 4. If you want, you can also output the displacements for subcase 1 and 2. But here, let's just go ahead and output displacements for subcase 3 and 4. Let's go ahead and do this for stress too. For stress, it's currently configured to output data for all the subcases, so maybe we'll leave it like that for now. For configure, let's go ahead and look for displacements. Here, I like to always use the plot option. If you're new, you should definitely use the plot option. There's another video that I have called How to Reduce the File Size of an F06 file. I recommend watching that video if you're interested on the use of the plot and the print command. So here I've selected plot. If you notice here on the right, I have displacements configured for plot equal to all. So basically it's going to output data for each element, or for each node rather. And same thing for the stress and the SPC forces. You know what? Should I output SPC forces? Yeah, we'll leave that on. Okay, let's go to download. And here I get a prompt here on the left side telling me that, hey, if you want to look at results, you have to output the H5 file. Here is a shortcut. Click on HDF5 out. This is going to add the HDF5 entry so I can output the H5 file. Now I'm ready to perform the statics analysis. So here we're running Nastran at this moment. We'll go ahead and wait a few moments. And then if everything went correctly, 1, it'll say it's complete, and 2, it'll load the results. Here, be careful when you look at the table here. Ignore the domain ID column. Look at the other columns. Right now we're looking at subcase 3 because that checkbox is marked. If I want to look at the results of subcase 4, I mark that second checkbox. So let's look at subcase 3. So if you remember, subcase 3 was this force. I was going in the positive z direction. So if we look at the deformations, let's zoom in. Let's turn off the deformations. So we'll click this button, display shape plot. So it's off. And then after. So before deformation, after deformation. So we see that our part is actually deforming along the, well, in this case, it was along the negative z direction. So before deformation and after deformation. Let's go ahead and look at our fourth load case. So to do this, let's go ahead and look and mark the checkbox for subcase 4. And let's go ahead and turn off the deformation. Okay, so the deformation is very subtle there. To make the deformation more noticeable, you can change the scale factor. Let's try a scale factor of 100. And let's go ahead and turn off the deformation. Okay, maybe that's too subtle still. Let's now use 1000. Okay, that's more noticeable. So this is before deformation and then after deformation. So basically this force that's going along the positive x direction, it is actually deforming the part. Now what about stresses? So for stresses, you will switch to the stress data set. Here you can see that we have data for subcases 1, 2, 3, and 4. A moment ago we were looking at the deformations for subcase 4, so let's go ahead and pick this checkbox. And maybe let's go ahead and display the deformation. Let's look at the von Mises stress, and here I get a few options. Actually, let's do a few things. Let's turn off the labels for the loads. Let's go back to the post, and let's go ahead and look at the, you notice right now that the stresses are being reported for the element, or the element center. And here, let me turn off some more data here. And let's go back here. Right, so you can see that in the region where we constrain the part, we are getting our high stresses. And right now we're looking at the stresses at the center of the element. Here, if I wanted to, I could switch to the corner stresses. So let me show you the before and after. So this is before and then after. And say you want to know where the highest stresses were. So here we'll turn on the maximum 3 labels. If you wanted to, you could select all 10. And we see that the maximum stresses are happening here. You can also select minimum labels, but here let's just focus on the maximum stress. So here, allegedly, the maximum stress is happening here. And then let me think, are there mid notes here? Oh no, it's not. It's showing me labels on the other side. So you can see that on the other side of this hole, we have also high stresses. Okay, so that was a short overview of how you would apply boundary conditions and loads, what the process would be like for adding subcases. If you want to assign loads and constraints, what would the process be like? And if you want to output data like displacements and stresses, what would the process be like? Also, how do you run Nastran? How do you look at the results? I wanted this tutorial to be a tutorial for someone who's new to Nastran. They're going to be asking the same questions that I asked when I started using Nastran. How do you do all of these things? So I wanted to make a video that shows you what the process is like for that. Okay, so we're pretty much at the end of the video. Just in case you do have questions, you're welcome to contact me at this email address. If you have a question regarding what you saw in the video, you can contact me at this email address. Now, if you want to use this web app, you can visit theengineeringlab.com. You can click on free trial here at the top right. That would be this blue button. Fill out the form, and then we'll go ahead and start preparing a free trial version of the web app for you to use. So that's pretty much the end of the video. And as always, thank you for watching.